Happy lunch hour, gang. Okay, you'll own nothing and be happy, right? How many times have we heard that? Klaus Schwab's famous words, the World Economic Forum's platform. Everybody should just rent and borrow and lease. We should just leave control of everything to the wealthy elite and let them make the decisions for us. Right? We know that. Okay. We also know that we have an election coming up in the United States, elections coming up in Canada. I mean, there's I think like 2/3 of the world has elections sometime in 2024, 2025. And things don't look that good for the world economy. Well, this is playing right into the hands of Klaus Schwab. We all hear every day about the housing costs and how crazy it is to buy a home. Oh, people can't afford to buy a home. Oh, the American dream is dead, yada, 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 right? You've all heard that. People bitch about renting and everything. And unfortunately, when you can't afford to buy something, you only have two other options, okay? It's either rent something or go live in mom and dad's basement, okay? For most of society, living in mom and dad's basement after you're 18 is not exactly a good idea. There's some that, hey, this is the best thing for me. And by no means am I going to say that renting isn't the correct option for some people. But it certainly is not, in my opinion, a long-term solution. But then again, I have a tendency to think where the mainstream media has a tendency to lie. There was an article out this morning on the New York Times. Okay, I'll link it below. If you want to go read it, you've got to sign up. You don't have to subscribe. You don't have to pay anything, but you got to give them an email address. You can read the whole article. It's the only way to do it. Sorry, I don't control the New York Times. Entitled, "Is it better to rent or buy? A financial calculator?" And they go through and give you the little chart where you could put in what the cost of a house is, what monthly rent is, what you think inflation is going to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Their answer, okay, on their basic premise is this. Look at the right-hand side. Renting saves you $133,000 over 10 years. Bullshit. Okay? Sorry, not buying that for 1 second. Sure, like I said earlier, I will give you the fact that there's plenty of people that need to rent, okay? You're young, you're just starting out, you're going to school, you're not sure where your career is going to be, anything, I get it, okay? You need to rent. But renting and starting a family or renting and having a family is financial suicide, okay? Because if you buy a house today and say whatever you want the price is, let's just say because of home value inflation, let's say it's $400,000, okay? That price is fixed, and you get a mortgage, and that interest rate, unless you're an idiot and get a variable rate, is fixed. Rent is fixed usually for a year until you have to sign your next lease. And of course, I've never heard in my life a landlord go, "We're reducing your rent." Okay, your rent goes up. I look back at the apartment I rented, the 600 and some odd square foot apartment I rented in 2013 when I was coming out of my disaster. And I had it for $625 a month. It's now $1,300. Okay. So 10 years later, the rent has doubled. Has your paycheck doubled in 10 years? Maybe. Maybe not. Chances are probably not, okay? But this is the deal. The liberal media is now trying to make it sound like renting a house is a better option than owning your own property. Now, I will give you this. When you rent a place, you usually have to come up with first month and last month, right? Okay, so if you say the average rent is $2,000 right now, okay, you got to come up with $4,000. All right, well, if you buy a $400,000 house and you've got to come up with 3% down, let's say you're getting an FHA loan or something like that, you got to come up with 12. I get it, okay? Like I said earlier, I get it on the rental part that, hey, I might not be living in this city for another year or something, or I might get married or whatever. I get it, okay? There are places and points in life where renting makes sense. Sure, you don't have the responsibility for maintenance. It's a lot easier as a renter to call up the front office and say, hi, my air conditioning's not working, and they send somebody up to fix it, as opposed to calling the local HVAC company and they go, hi, my air conditioning's not working, and they go, great, that's going to cost you $2,500. Okay. Here's the issue, though. So let's go back to my previous example and say you 10 years ago bought a $400,000 house at, let's say, interest rate at 7%. Granted, they weren't that 7% back then, but just for the sake of argument, let's say you're doing it now. I think interest rates are somewhere maybe around 7.75% at this point, but let's use 7 for easy math. You bought that $400,000 house 10 years ago. With what's happening to the housing market, let's say that house is now worth $800,000. If you had a 7% mortgage over the course of 10 years, and yes, I went through a mortgage calculator to figure this one out, you would have paid about $62,000 in principal so far. So between the $400,000 in appreciation that you have and the $62,000 that you've paid into equity, you now have $462,000 worth of equity on something you paid $400,000 for. Not bad, okay? If you sold the house, you'd actually have money in your pocket. If you moved out of your apartment, you've got a big fat nothing. Okay? What does the renter have? Zip. Okay? You know, after 30 years of paying that house, provided you're just making payments, the house is yours. After 30 years of paying rent, in 30 years and month 361, you're paying rent. Okay? It's absolutely silly that the liberal media is trying to tell you this. You buy the house. No, you don't start out, and again, I'm talking to the younger folks here. You know, a lot of us own our houses, okay, but wisdom comes with age. You don't buy the mansion when you're 25. You're not going to live in the same house that you grew up in. You're going to probably go find yourself a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom starter home on a postage stamp lot, and that's it. Do you realize the tax benefits you get? You don't get to write off your rent. You get to write off your mortgage interest, okay? You own the house? You want to paint it purple? Go ahead, okay? Try doing that in an apartment, see what happens. You want to rip out the carpet and put hardwood floor in? Go ahead. Try doing that in an apartment, okay? You want to put a hole in the wall to hang a picture? Go ahead, okay? I mean, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to live by somebody else. You know, can I put a plant on my porch? Nope, sorry, that's against the apartment's rules, you know? Hearing now about apartment complexes charging you for parking at the apartment complex, okay? Or charging for trash pickup. You can put your bag of trash out the door and we'll come get it every morning. We just charge you $30 a month for that. Well, I don't need to. I can throw it out in the dumpster on the way. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not optional. That's an automatic benefit we give you that you get to pay for, okay? This is the thing. They want us all poor, no assets, no equity, because this is how they control us. And the media is doing whatever they can now to make it sound like this is the way you should do it. No, I'm sorry. There's no way renting saves you $133,000 over 10 years. You have zero equity. You own a house over 10 years, you have equity built up. Even if the value of the house goes in a toilet, okay, let's say it's 2008, 2009 now, everything you've paid in there is still equity you have. Whether or not you can get it out by selling the house is a different animal, okay? Got that part too. But if you've got a steady job, if you're married, or if you've got kids, somebody else is counting on you, renting is the biggest waste of, well, I take it back, leasing a car is the biggest waste of money. Renting is the second biggest waste of money you could possibly do. Once you've got yourself established, start building your future. The hell with the Starbucks, the hell with the Netflix and Paramount and 86 other pay-per-view type things that you get. Put that in a house and then do whatever you can to pay it off as fast as possible. Interest rates up here at around 7, okay? Sucks, right? Hate to tell you this. Historically, that's about normal. Society just got used to cheap money over the last 15 years. The 2% and 3% mortgage rates were not normal. They were way below average. This is normal. A lot of you guys are old enough to remember mortgage rates in the 1970s, early 1980s, when they were 17, 18%. Okay? Yeah, people still bought houses then. What did they do? Rates dropped. They refinanced. Same thing here. If rates are at 7%, they drop back to 3, refinance. If rates are at 7% now and go to 10, guess what? You're probably pretty happy you got 7, okay? It's like anything else. Don't try to time the market. Housing is expensive. Rent is expensive. It ain't getting cheaper. The more and more illegals Joe lets into the country, the harder and harder it is going to be to find housing, and the more expensive it is going to be to get it. Supply and demand, economics 101. The more people that want housing, the more they're going to charge for it. Okay? This is what it is. To all those people that want to blame the boomers, that, oh, it's their fault that the housing market is so expensive. I guess in one respect, you're right. Most of Congress and the president are boomers. Okay? So they screwed it up. It ain't your neighbor. Okay? But this is the thing. The media, as usual, is lying to you to push a narrative that, oh, you should be happy that you don't own a house. Look at the flexibility you have to move. Right. Right until they tell you, there's your cubicle. This is where you get to live. Be happy. Pinball out.